I've never planned long term with anything I did. I was kind of just, doing whatever. If you want to go that down that rabbit hole, if whatever gave me dopamine in the moment, I was just grinding and I was having fun with it. And that was also my comfort zone at the same time. I never knew how far it can get, what I want to do with it.
Sturm, welcome to the podcast.
What's up? Happy to be here.
Yeah, this is not the first piece of content we've recorded together. You did me a solid couple months ago recording the hand with Ponakovs. That was pretty cool for me just to kind of see both of you articulate your thoughts. But I don't think we checked in after that. After you had a chance to see it and hear Ponakovs' thoughts, did you have any thoughts in hindsight?
Not that many. He was kind of keeping it basic. I think he was obviously trying to not give away too much about his game either. And, he was showing me respect. He was showing respect to the situation. Obviously, the river decision was the most interesting, but yeah, either way, I would have guessed he puts in more sauce. He's a bit more going into the depths and nitty gritties of population reads and how that trickles back and forth, because that's kind of what I get lost in my thought process sometimes. But yeah, I thought he was doing a great job at keeping it structured. And
Now, I don't know if you remember, he did say he thought your ace 3 open ace 3-0 from the low jack was a little spicy, wondering if maybe you had full respect for his ability.
I mean, we were already establishing the lineup was very weak behind, and there was some guy who called it 9-7 suited, which he usually would VPIP. So how the mood of the day is, and then you can just decide. The table looked a little bit scared, but I mean, in the video itself, I was saying it's a reasonable open, and then he pointed out that it probably is a bit wide. I would agree now, but what does it matter, right? It's very opens are very narrow EV decisions anyway.
Exactly. So, I was planned on having you on the podcast at some point, no matter what, but I got a couple of requests for, I may pronounce this incorrectly, for Rumukulus to join on the podcast. And am I saying it right?
Sure, I mean, I don't mind either way. I think the way I've been pronouncing it is Rumukulus, which is just pronounce it like you would if it was a German word. But if you're gonna ask this question, then there's no meaning behind the name. I stole it when I was like 10 or something and kept stuck with it.
Well, despite the fact that we've gotten quite close this past year, I saw that and said, "Who the fuck is Rumukulus?"
Who the fuck are you?
And so I had to Google it, and I was like, "Oh, that's Leon. What?" Okay. And then I fall into this rabbit hole of Leon doing streams, and I'm seeing my buddy like 4 years ago going, "All right, we got Jackson against 6-7 suit. Let's go, let's go."
Oh wow, that's sick. We have to call here. I'm pretty sure. Give me 1 second though. Yeah, I'm falling to him. Maybe am I? Nah, I'm not. I'm amazing.
Very entertaining for me to see you in this, very different environment. Obviously younger, and it's just like a whole different ball game. Can you talk a little bit about how you got into streaming, what that experience was like?
A lot I can talk about then. I'm not sure if I relate much to the person I was back then, that person that you saw on screen there. I've changed a lot, I think, but it was very interesting times, and I think I enjoyed streaming a lot. The way I got into it was through Stefan Schillhabel, who, well, I streamed on a channel called No Limit Gaming, which is like an esports slash poker organization which tried to fund its esports team through poker. That's how it started originally. I think in like 2018, maybe 1 year earlier, 1 year later, I don't know, with a bunch of the flagship German names like Fedor and Steffen Sontheimer, Rainer and Stefan, Lissi, Christopher Frank. And then the idea from Stefan was, when I wasn't in the picture yet, that he wanted to do like an academy team where he gets in young players and they're being coached and mentored, and in return they put out content and stream, because he kind of noticed that all the people that he got into this organization, they didn't really want to stream anymore that much, and he was kind of losing momentum with that. So that was a nice way of catching it back up, and I was the first one who he admitted it to the team, and from there on out we got extremely close. We played a lot of Counter-Strike together, which was the first bonding method. And yeah, I've been spending most of my poker time with him ever since. And yeah, that's how I got into streaming. About once a week, I think it started. And towards the end, maybe I streamed like once a month or something whenever I felt like doing it. I must say that grinding is a lot more draining when I stream. Obviously, you're doing multiple things at once, and my brain can't handle 6 tabling, so I have to load up like 12 or 14 tables while streaming, and it's incredibly, yeah, it's just a lot. Could have maybe solved that by doing it, by just respecting my well-being a bit more and not, being the lunatic that I am when I play poker. But overall, it was very fun to interact with the chat and way different experience of grinding online than it would be if I didn't stream.
So a lot of questions kind of emerge for me. I should be careful not to be too naive because I think 90% of the audience knows a lot more about the poker streaming world than I do. So I don't want to ask boring questions that other people already know the answer to. But one thing that kind of pops up is there are a lot of capable pros, I think, who do poker streaming, and I'm not sure if there are almost any elite pros who are currently streaming. Do you think that some of that, and you've become an elite pro, I don't know about by your definition, but by mine, and I think most people out there, and I wonder if kind of moving on from streaming you felt was necessary, or if you think you could have continued to get better at the rate that you did between then and now while maintaining, all the obligations of streaming.
This obviously is a big, big factor, how much EV you give up by streaming because people know about your game. I think it's been a big topic for every poker streamer there was, but I was always of the consideration that not enough people watch my stream and care to listen for it for hours to know, to study my game essentially. So back then when I was playing, let's say 200 ABI online, it didn't matter much, and I think I didn't give up much EV doing it. The reason that I quit was definitely not for EV reasons. It was just I didn't really enjoy the attention, and just again, it was very draining. So that was the main reason. I think you can become very elite even though you're streaming. Most people who have done that and are doing that are playing a bit more theoretical driven, I would say, so that they make sure that they're not exploitable, which makes sense. So maybe you cap yourself. Yeah, it's very possible. But
That's part of the issue. I wasn't even considering that, hey, your whole cards are up, so whatever kind of cool exploits you're looking into and population tendencies, very difficult to not display your exact, let's say, dynamic against Lena with every hand you play against Lena being accessible for him to see. And that happening for literally all the best players in the world. So anyone who wants to dig in and you don't know who knows what and who isn't watching your stream at all. That's its own thing. But I was more so thinking there's so much energy you have to devote to this, that time spent studying, talking with high level friends about hands. It seems like it's that great initial boost where it puts you in contact with so many people. But I'm imagining, except for the most extroverted personality who 8 hours of talking about what they're doing actually continues to generate more energy for them, that I personally would just be drained like crazy. I don't know how consistent that is with your feeling.
it should be relatively consistent, and that's, I guess, what I meant by it was too draining to maintain. In general, I think it's possible though. Like, it's not that big of a deal, especially the way I did it, where Stefan had a whole team that was doing like all the technical stuff behind the scenes. So if I had any question, I would just set up someone on Discord and I would get immediate help with whatever I needed. That was incredibly helpful. I didn't need to put in much time. You just start stream, end stream, do your grind. Yes, the talking and everything is more draining, but I would spend that time grinding anyway. And I wasn't doing as much studying as people might anticipate or as I would have wanted to. So it's not like I missed energy outside of the stream to do anything else. I think it would have been maintainable socially, maybe. And if you go on events, maybe then you're more prone to interact with other streamers and you have other conversations. Maybe you don't end up talking about hands, as you said, with your peers or anything. Maybe there you lack a little bit of the progress that I had, and maybe that would have limited me in some way. Yeah, the interesting thing about my streaming career was that I didn't stream on my own channel. So if I stream on the No Limit Gaming channel, then it's less personal for me. I don't have my own community, and it was just like a favor I did for the company, sort of, while having fun streaming. So it didn't occupy much of my time, or I didn't feel obligated to put in any social energy either. It was just that naturally a lot of contacts occurred, and then I made friends and stuck with them, and that was very helpful in that sense. And then I didn't feel any pressure to keep the stream going or anything when I quit, and it was just gone. And people told me it's sad that it's gone. They miss Leon Mondays or whatever they were called, and
Yeah, that sounds appealing to me. I've never, once considered being a streamer because I kind of was under the understanding that this is a full-time thing, that it's kind of like content creators just have to keep pumping it out. But the idea that, hey, you know what? Might be a little bit extra motivating. I want to play online poker for the first time in 4 months. If I have 50 people watching, that might keep me a little bit more engaged.
this is pretty much exactly what Stefan did, and with Fedor and Stefan was with them too. And they just, they didn't really enjoy playing online that much anymore. And then whenever they did, they fired up a stream, played in the team house, like next to each other, and had fun, drank some beers or whatever, and they just had a very good time. As he told me, these were one of the best online poker nights of his life, I think. Um, and yeah, as for the negative parts of not it being my own stream is, I guess, that it wasn't my own community, so to speak. So with whatever you were saying about the urge of feeling or having the feeling that you need to put out more content to grow the channel, I did not have that because I wouldn't have done it for my own name anyway. It was just a thing I did, and I never cared about the growth, which can be very draining. I think, if you take Egyptian Patrick Tardif, like Patrick Tardif, for example, he puts out insane amounts of content and streams every day. I think he does it mostly out of enjoyment and maybe doesn't have this feeling of this urge to put out content, and it's probably quite durable for him. But not having that was kind of nice.
Yeah, yeah, knowing that you're spoken for is nice. Um, you brought up something a little bit earlier about streaming and part of your I don't know about falling out of love with it, but deciding not to do it so much was that the attention wasn't a huge thing for you. And you and I talked after, you kind of blew up on the live scene, and poker, like sports, has this way of anointing people like quickly, like, oh, up and comer, we got Leon Sturm here. Wasn't Jan Zarenz like the new player of the year or something a couple of years ago, despite being like a 20-year professional? But point being, probably a lot of people who aren't very familiar with you, don't know too much, responded to your results and in a positive way, said congratulations, wow, and said some nice things. And you told me about it being kind of a difficult situation to navigate in some ways. You want to talk about that?
Sure, yeah. First of all, I think in general, I've always struggled with accepting compliments or anything like that. I'm very harsh on myself and self-critical, so whenever someone says anything positive, then the only way I know to respond is to talk myself down and name a negative perk of myself in order to balance it out, or say, yes, sure, I won that, but, and then I go on rambling, and the buts are just so much bigger than anything positive could ever be. And
Hmm.
this process kept on happening whenever someone congratulated me, and it was just very, very draining. And I didn't really know what to. I mean, it's obviously I'm in a very privileged position to even be congratulated on it. It's a weird thing to get upset about.
It resonates perfectly with me. I've done it
Yeah,
plenty, and yeah, I mean, it sounds like a Woody Allen movie. Like it feels very familiar. So I'm not laughing at you, more like in agreement.
I guess in just today's world, I just feel the urge to make sure that everyone understands that I understand technically how privileged I am, and yet I have something to moan about. But that's just how human beings work, and there's nothing bad about that, I guess. But yeah, it was also just the conversations. They were just, they congratulate me, I say something, and then do I now try to get into small talk with them? What's happening? And but overall, it's fine. It's not. It wasn't a big of a deal. It was. I think it sparked, or like it embodied some process within myself where my confidence was kind of picking up a little bit of momentum, picking up a bit of pace, because I've always been a very low confidence guy, and then suddenly I get all of this outer affirmation, and then you know there's always a lot of things happening within you with concerning how other people treat you and how other people see you. And I think that was an important thing to happen for me because, again, I had very low self esteem, still definitely under average, but it's growing and it's been good for me. So that was, I guess, a positive I can take from it for sure.
Well, let's see if I can test this and just keep saying nice things about you until you lose your shit and start listing the bad things. So, you talking like this, I don't know how I'm not sure I love making people self-aware of positive things about themselves that might make them uncomfortable. But you know, you're a very well-liked person in the high-stakes scene. You have to be aware of that. And I think, for people who don't know you and just kind of listen to the last 2 minutes, I would be surprised if they didn't see you as a pretty endearing person. And I think it's this combination of you being genuine, along with, wanting to be fair and equitable in your exchanges with people of all kind, to use some of the parlance of 2024. But with that in mind, you have this unique perspective that we've talked about some, in that you have so many friends in the high stakes poker world and you're very well respected, but you're also an average of like 10 years younger than a lot of your friends and peers in poker. You've actually been on the planet like 40% less than many of us. So you've got some of the Gen Z perspective, and you're just good at things that I don't even know how work. But also this very comfortable dynamic where I think you get treated differently, in my opinion, mostly for better, but I don't know. I'm rambling. Tell me about your experience being 23 in a world where, yeah, the average age of like the best high rollers is probably 32 or so. Maybe you disagree and might put that at like 29, but I'm very curious about your experience, because I don't think there's too many worlds where, the 23-year-old is walking around with a couple of 35-year-olds who are just treating him like a peer, and they're exchanging back and forth, not simply on one small subject.
Yeah, I mean, I have a series of buts lining up in my brain that I just want to fire off.
Please.
I'm not sure it's the best way of going about it. Like, first of all, I don't think I notice it as that big of a deal anymore. I haven't at all whenever I entered either, because I have always been used to getting my way or interacting with older people in the poker scene, because that's how I started off. Like, all the German community that I interacted with, they were a lot older. Stefan, who I just mentioned, is a lot older. Not want to mention his age because then he gets.
Yeah, he's deceptively old, right?
I think he's. Oh, fuck. I think he's 38. Maybe I'm saying
Oh, really?
around.
Okay. I mean, I'm 37.
Oh
Can't be
no,
old.
yeah. It's now I put you in the same position as well, and I feel bad about it. So, but that's that. So I think I got.
39. Oh, it's a golf phrase. I'm on the second half of life. We'll see.
Yeah, no, the golf, the golfing anecdotes won't hit with me. I haven't gone that rabbit hole yet. I'm not old enough for that yet. I guess
We're
maybe still yet to come. All poker players go down the golf rabbit hole eventually. I feel like it's either that or that. So yeah, I think I got used to it rather early, and because I wasn't socializing much with my age group anyway, because I was just playing online poker. I had a couple of friends my age, but outside and inside of poker. But overall, I got used to hanging out with older people a lot, and I don't think that. So yeah, the first part I will mention is that I think whenever I was in any social situation in my whole life, I was very good at adapting to my surroundings, because I felt the urge to have to do that, because I always felt like I was different in many ways. Not to go into detail about that, but I just became very good at blending in, and then that was kind of always my biggest goal whenever I'm in any social situation, to, make it seem like I belong there and that I get along with everyone. And that very quickly turned into something more comfortable and less of this draining urge that I needed to fulfill or whatever. And yeah, I don't put any pressure on myself in that regard. I think I had a rather natural transition, and again, I wouldn't have viewed it as something that exceptional as you just pointed it out. But I guess now, if I look back at it, it is kind of cool. And whenever people do ask me what age I am, which happens relatively regularly, because someone will point out, make some age joke or whatever when I'm on the table. Yeah, that will always be the same thing as receiving the compliments for winning something, where I will say my age, and obviously I know that it's impressive to be sitting there, and then I will get self-conscious whenever I have to, answer that, and then people are like, "Oh, wow," and it just goes. It's always been the same with that, but yeah, I guess this would have been something for me to be able to spot that it's something special that I am in those realms, given how people respond to my age. But I didn't really like this
Gotta
part of it.
interject with something. I gotta cut you off because I was smirking through some stuff that would not be remotely okay for me to be smirking, but it was because like two Leon stories are coming to mind that like just crack me up where no doubt or disagreement at all about your assessment of yourself trying to blend in. But some of my favorite moments with you are when your personality just bursts through and it's not at all intentional. I can picture the first time we didn't know each other terribly well. Me, you, Fedor, and Tobias Schweck. We go to whose last name I'm never going to say correctly. Hit me.
It was pretty good. Schlecht. I don't know.
We went to play spike ball in Hyde Park in London, and we're having a great time. We're all pretty competitive. Me, you, and Fedor are far more experienced than Tobias is at Spike. It was either his first or second time. We'd played many combined hours, apart. And so naturally, whoever was kind of paired with Tobias was going to be at a handicap in those games. And I remember at a certain point, you and Fedor were pretty competitive and jabbing at each other whenever you weren't on the same team. Then it's you and Tobias against me and Fedor. I'm being long-winded with the story, but point is, Tobias misses something on the easier side, and you just kind of like start yelling at him. You're like, whatever, saying stuff in German, and I can tell you're just really ramped up and excited. And Fedor is like needling you. He goes, "You got to motivate him. Don't do that," or whatever. And then you just looked at him and you just go, "You gotta light a fire under him. You gotta do something to get him going." I was just so excited to see you so ramped up in this game. And like, to me, I don't know, like it looks like your self-consciousness in that moment had just like kind of gone away because the competitiveness took over. And I love that. And then quickly, I've got one other very separate story. You and I are on a walk. We run into someone who invites us to a party later, tells us that Russia's number one DJ is going to be doing the show. We're just kind of trying to get back to, play our tournament pretty soon. And you decide that you need to Google this and say, who is it? Doesn't look like number one. I don't know. Is it this guy? Is he number three? Is he whatever? And I knew you were just being so genuine, and it was cracking me up where I'm like, holy shit, Leon, not now. We gotta go.
I mean, it's not only that we didn't have time for it, but also just to question the guy's ability to, be genuine about what rankings this DJ has is, I guess, very out of place. But yeah, that sounds something I would do. I wouldn't have, I didn't view the situation like that. I thought it was just a normal way of interacting with people. But yeah, now that you mentioned it, it does sound a little bit out of place.
But just, yeah, all that is to say, like, I've really enjoyed when your self-consciousness is not there at all and you're just kind of bursting at the seams being Leon.
Yeah, I guess this is what I mean when I say that I needed to refrain myself whenever I'm in society or whatever. But when I feel comfortable, then I just go rambling. And yeah, I do enjoy those moments the most myself too. But whenever I do face reactions of people where they show some reaction in the sense that I react inappropriately, then I get once again very self-conscious and I will question my behavior and then go into my shell again, kind of. But
I think there's some maladaptive software in so many people's brains with that, where we are spending so much time ruminating about one person who may have taken us the wrong way, or maybe even 100% did, but it's like such a minor part of their life. And then there's this not recognizing how many people like me in those two situations I described, like got a lot of joy and mileage out of you just being you, even if there was a chance, like, okay, maybe I don't think so, because Toby doesn't strike me as sensitive at all, but like if he like was a little bothered for, a little bit of time, it's not the end of the world. And if the other person who you were questioning his DJ prowess, if he was like, fuck this guy, like it's okay.
it is okay, even though he's potentially a little bit of a, terrifying person to do stuff. But it's
Is that why the ambulance was going on in the background right when you said that?
maybe, yeah, we've noticed how there's a lot of signs from the universe here to make this podcast happen in general.
Building off the conversation about streaming, when I found out about the Legend of Rumukulus, this filled in a question that I had where I have plenty of respect for you and think you're a talented individual, but you hopped in the Triton booth one night in Montenegro and I listened and you were just instantly fantastic. Definite best first timer I've ever listened to. And I was just like, what the fuck? He's 23. Why is Leon so good at this? Tell me, do you have any interest in commentating more in the future? And do you think the streaming helped with that? What was your experience?
Once again, I wouldn't have put it this way, but thank you. I don't know. I was just going with the flow, kind of. I was a little bit nervous, but I think we were on a walk before. Maybe I was on an individual walk, kind of just prep myself for it, and then I don't know. Whenever you talk about poker, I don't think there's much that can go wrong from my perspective because I'm just very confident in how I articulate my thoughts, and streaming definitely helped with that. I like at least 50, 60, probably more like 70% of the stuff I talked about was strategy, and then yeah, I don't know. I just feel very confident articulating my poker thoughts, and there was a lot of poker to be commented on because it was like the 200K bubble. So Nanonoko put all the conversation towards the stream anyway because it was like the highest equity moment of the whole series. So there was not much off-topic talk that I could have, portrayed myself in an awkward way, in an awkward manner. So I think I felt very comfortable, and also the two guys I was commentating with, Griffin and Nanonoko, they're very, very, very smooth and very experienced, and they just make you feel welcome and make you feel like you can just be yourself. If you fuck up, it's fine. They will steer the ship back on track, kind of. Yeah.
Yeah, it kind of makes me think, not in the podcast, but in a separate interview, Ike had told me that the poker table is where he feels most confident and least anxious. Do you feel any of that? Do you feel like the poker table is one of your most confident places in life?
Certainly not. No, in the live scene, I don't think so. When I'm at the live poker table, or in general, when I play poker, no, I don't feel that comfortable because again, I'm very self-critical. So I have a lot of respect for my inner discipline, not discipline, like my alter ego or whatever that keeps saying I need to be perfect and this kind of stuff. So I'm very much on edge, and it's kind of like a fight or flight type mentality. I feel like whenever I do play. Um, so yeah, I wouldn't say playing poker I feel most comfortable, but talking poker again, like I don't need to play, I don't need to perform, I don't get performance anxiety or whatever. So yeah, that I feel more comfortable with for sure.
What about when you're playing poker, but you and I are playing the game at the table? Does that bring the anxiety down?
It helps to an extent because then I think of different things, but overall, if the game is probably not the best thing to play at the poker table because then you like miss potential hands that are going on, and I sometimes struggle with there's definitely a difference to be spotted when you're really in the zone, you're watching every hand, and you get into the flow of the game, and not even talking about dynamics, but more so just having your brain be prepped to perform and think about ranges and all that. And not that the game is obviously do people even know when you say the game? Do people know what you're talking about?
We'll play the game at some point also. Plus, it's been a part of the podcast. But yeah, for anyone who doesn't know, this is the ranking game that we've played on the podcast a lot. Deuce through ace. It's a subjective question, but I'm always playing it at the table with my table mates who I'm friendly with, and anyone who wants to play. And Leon is very often obliges me.
Yeah. So in general, I think there's room for it. It obviously is a little bit different what you think about, but in general, your brain needs to be creative, and it costs a lot of energy to play, like a lot of thoughts and puzzle solving and piecing the information together and stuff. If you are good at structuring for yourself when you need to be focusing on the table and when you have time, when the dealer is shuffling the cards or whatever and there's nothing going on, then you can put time into the game. And if you're really good at that, then I think it's a good way of spending the in between times at the live poker table. I haven't really learned that yet, I think. So I think for me it was a little bit stressful, maybe.
Yeah, that's a great description in terms of like allocating your time. And I think, ignoring the game for a minute, just talking about playing poker, there's a conversation to be had about counting the pot and looking for live reads and trying to imagine what you are going to be opening in an ICM spot from the low jack, given the current stack setup. There's so many things to be thinking about at the poker table, and you only have so much bandwidth to devote. That I think that that's something you don't hear too much discussed. Each person kind of figures out how they want to allocate their bandwidth, but I don't, for all the strategy discussions you hear, and even some discussions of live tells and whatnot, that's a discussion I don't hear too much. It seems like probably some people just get 15 years into their career with a really bad division of how they spend their brain power. And that's not anything about how high brain power they are or not, like how much they know. Um, I think maybe mindfulness is adjacent to that and kind of creeps in for a lot of people. But it's a discussion I don't hear very much. Maybe the mental game coaches talk about this a lot, but there are just so many things to be thinking about when you're at, especially the live table, that you can't possibly think of everything, and how you decide to spend your time is pretty important. But kind of touching that, for me, I find that the game is very helpful because my number one problem is being bored. I get bored very easily. I don't want to be at the table. I don't want to sit. I want to go play something that keeps me more engaged, like a sport.
We pipped the 9-7 suited in my ace-3 off Ponakovs hand, and if we wouldn't have played the game there, possible.
Yeah, I mean, it's very reasonable. If you look back at the history of my career, we can talk about seven figures that have been put in the dumpster due to boredom. That's why even tennis is too slow for me. I need table tennis. The ball comes back quicker. That brings me to, after my rant about, what I like, what do you think is most important for you to play your A game? There's a lot of discussion of, optimize this and that, and there are plenty of impediments to playing your A or A plus game. What do you think the most important things are for you playing your best poker live?
But first of all, I don't think I play my A game that often because I just suck at preparing myself and taking care of whatever I need to be performing well. But I think it's a mixture of routines and comfortability with myself and self acceptance, which is usually the highest when maybe I come off a big score, maybe I just went into the commentary booth and I feel, proud of myself for a performance or whatever. And maybe it's just like I usually get into the zone very easily when I have a deep run and I'm yet to have blundered, or at least what I view as a blunder. Um, then I feel pretty at ease. Then I'm watching hands, I'm being present. You're in the money already. That plays more of a role than I would like to admit, I think, with being comfortable with how the tournament is going, how I'm feeling about, potentially winning. Yeah, there's a lot of factors that come into play, I think, more than I would like to. But yeah, I think this mixture is a good answer on how I get there. Again, it doesn't happen that often. I'm working on that. Hopefully it gets better in the future.
Is there anything like, I don't know, sleeping better, or making sure to exercise before you play, or something with your diet that you think, if you could kind of snap your fingers and improve one thing overnight, anything jump to mind?
I think those are all relatively important, but I guess just be a bit more strict with exercise, yeah, because on those trips I won't really go into the gym. I will work out when I've A, get the motivation to go for a run, B, play spike ball, or C, play paddle or tennis, which naturally doesn't happen every time. And I'm also rather bad at spotting the difference in between a day where I worked out and a day where I didn't. But usually I feel better when I did work out, and yeah, I just need to make sure that that sticks and that I'm more disciplined with that. Diet, I feel okay about. Just make sure to eat. Whenever I don't eat, then I don't feel that great. I know a lot of people who say that they like to fast when they play, which makes sense because then, evolutionary speaking, your body needs food. It's more concentrated to get the job done, kind of. But I don't know, for me, I'm in a groggy mood and foggy headspace, so I don't like that. And yeah, sleep is important for sure as well. So maybe the discipline to go to bed early and, not get stuck in a conversation 2 hours in the evening when I needed to have quit that an hour earlier and needed to get into my bedtime routine.
Yeah, I'm not at risk for that. When we finish playing, I don't want to talk to anyone. My socializing in the morning with caffeine. That's about it for me.
Okay, that's interesting. We haven't really talked much about it. I socialize way better in the evenings, and then I get this. Because then I also get into a state of being where I don't know. I feel a lot more calmer, and then I don't want the day to end because I feel good about whatever's happening now, and I know if I go to sleep and wake up in the morning, I'm gonna be like, and yeah. So I kind of like the evening vibes. To be honest, I'm a big night
Yeah.
owl.
So, along with playing your A game in poker, kind of a conversation slash joke that comes to my mind very often is when you think about it's probably true of very motivated, highly successful people in a lot of fields, but we have a front row seat to it in poker. Um, Fedor and I talked about this a little bit. This culture of optimization and kind of losing the forest in the trees, Is it forest in the trees or trees in the forest? Seems like it should be losing the trees in the forest. The joke that comes to mind for me is like a high stakes professional saying, yes, I want to play spike ball in the morning because I've noticed that when I have fun, I tend to play better poker. Like forgetting like maybe what the point of life is and like, wait, if you're having fun, isn't that great regardless of whether or not it makes you play better poker later on? Do you ever find yourself with that issue or pretty far from that kind of thing?
I think I do a lot, but I think in my case that's kind of been extended towards the way I go through life. That I'm again very harsh on myself, so I want to optimize in all areas. Like if I random example that pops to my mind, if I go from the desk here to the kitchen, I don't want to go twice. I want to optimize for, I mean, maybe this is a bad example, but I want to carry as much as I can to have as little time wasted as possible. And then I always end up noticing how I can't stack it all up and I have to go twice anyway and I lost time, which maybe is a good metaphor for how this happens in the poker world. If you over optimize, then you kind of miss the point. I definitely do it. I know a lot of people who do it a lot more efficiently and maybe they put a lot of more of their energy into it. It's definitely a trend I've been noticing too, and I've struggled with that. That everything you do in the end is supposed to improve your performance, and with poker that definitely has grown within me because obviously there's now a greater point to be sharp to do whatever you can to optimize your time or your EV or whatever. People do it in different ways, but it's definitely to a sickening extent, and a lot of people should IMO look out for their mental well-being or their physical well-being. Even maybe they're close to being burned out or whatever, because that's just what happens when you put in so much time and energy into this thing, and you're very competitive and very hard on yourself, and then it's a rabbit hole to go down, I think.
Along those lines, you and I have talked, even at such a young age, at 23, in some senses, you've kind of expressed being at a crossroads, deciding how good do you want to get at poker, how much do you want to devote to this, and you made a relatively major decision recently to kind of go back to school. Do you want to talk about that and about what goes into this decision in terms of how much of your energy to funnel into being the best poker player you can be versus being the best Leon you can be?
Sure. I mean, first thing I want to mention, I guess, is that I've never, or to understand it, but I've never planned long term with anything I did. I was kind of just, doing whatever. If you want to go that down that rabbit hole, if whatever gave me dopamine in the moment, I was just grinding and I was having fun with it, and that was also my comfort zone at the same time. I never knew how far it can get, what I want to do with it. So the bracelet in the summer of 23 last year was kind of like the turning point where I had a big achievement and I now had all this outer affirmation, and I didn't really know what to do with that, and I didn't know how to feel about it, and I didn't know if that was like a goal I now achieved or if I want to push further or anything. And I also noticed rather quickly with all of this stuff going on within myself after all this, all the conversations I had and people reaching out to me and everything, that I wasn't really happy with the way I feel whenever I play poker and what mindset it puts myself in. This goes back to the conversation from just now about pressure on yourself and optimization and everything. And it's just, I have definitely drained myself a lot throughout my career and didn't take care of any other areas. So it's a mixture of me feeling the urge to socialize with people my age and not losing that part and kind of don't miss out on my youth, if you want to call it that, because I've been kind of doing that, even though I had a fun time in poker, no question about it. But um, I struggle to connect with people my age sometimes because obviously we lead way different lives. And yeah, and at the same time, this mindset thing, I'm just not happy with the way I feel whenever I play poker. So I want to get that in check before I start playing again. And then I can think about how much I want to push it. But I've already noticed how poker is a very, how poker can be a very selfish job to go after because you just usually just do it for yourself. Obviously, you have infinite opportunities to provide value for people within poker and outside of that while you do it. But in a vacuum at itself, poker is a selfish thing that you just do for yourself and for your own return. So I think I was lacking that to feel a bit more content with my life because I was, yeah, just kind of grinding, not having a care in the world type thing.
Do you think any of these realizations or thoughts would have struck you or struck you with this um, amount of power had you not been successful in your early going, or do you think you would, if you were, let's say, down 1.5 mil in live so far, but still you had people who respect you and are, buying your action, do you think you'd still be in that fully competitive, I want to prove myself in poker? Um, or do you think you would have kind of stumbled on some of these realizations regardless?
It's a tough question. I think I would not have stumbled across it because I think this little rise in my, if you want to call it self-esteem or whatever, was very important for me to realize that whatever I'm doing is not good for me and I need to take a step back. And I wouldn't have had that strength if I didn't find that strength from my environment. Because it's again just the comfort zone that I talked about earlier, with which always was my desk where I'm at right now was my biggest enemy always and my biggest love at the same time. Like I enjoy my time here. It's a very safe space that I'm in. I think it's a problem a lot of people in Gen Z, which I, by the way, I don't even know if I count as Gen Z, whatever, if I'm Gen Z or whatever. Um, I think a lot of people struggle with that because it's just very convenient to not go out into the world where all your fears, but also all your desires lie. Um, it's very easy to be stuck in this space where you have everything at your instant request, but it's just a very short term contentness that you're getting. Um, so yeah, I wanted to break out of that.
And you did. 6 months ago, you threw it all away. You put the phone away, and for 1 week, you hiked in Patagonia, right? Can you tell us
Uh-huh.
about that decision and how you felt about that?
Yeah, at the beginning of this year, I was kind of like, okay, no poker. I did play the PGT free roll in Vegas, but went from there straight to Buenos Aires, and then I kind of had the plan of doing some alone travel because even though I travel to poker stops alone, I always have people that I can interact with. I never feel truly alone. I never feel out of place or anything because you always have something to do. And I feel awkward when I go, in a restaurant alone or whatever, or if I'm anywhere alone, in fact. So I wanted to push that and learn how to do it. And then I ended up in Buenos Aires with 6 poker players and only hung out with them and didn't get anything done, really. But then I planned this hiking trip that you just mentioned. And yeah, I mean, it was only a week. I was kind of aiming for a longer time and pushing myself a lot more. And the hike was great. I got there and I immediately, I went there alone and I got to talk to a bunch of German people and also international people and it clicked immediately. I always had my little crew there. I never felt alone. So maybe I didn't push myself or like push my inner well-being with being on my own as much, but I definitely noticed how easy it is to get around in the world and get to know non-poker players, which was also important for me to realize.
Yeah, I was gonna say they weren't poker players. It's not like your goal is to be like who Ted Kaczynski is.
Is that the guy from How I Met Your Mother? Ted? No, no, right? Not Ted from How I Met Your Mother. That wouldn't
He
be.
is the guy from How I Met Your Mother. You got it.
Oh, okay, I see.
Um,
This show's very, very popular. Oh, it isn't. Oh, you're trolling.
no,
You're,
he's
you're
the
on the wrong.
a famous domestic terrorist in the United States who was a big time loner.
Oh, I see.
Point being, that's not your goal. But by the way, for the audience, because yes, it looks like I'm picking on my friend Leon, but the guy didn't know who Stu Unger was. So, we're just different generations.
And I can't talk about it because I haven't looked them up yet, but yeah, whatever.
Awesome. I mean, yeah, you should look it up. Stu Unger is an interesting story. That said, yeah, I mean, I think, my personal opinion, you might be being a little bit harsh just because you actually met people and fell in with them. Like that was kind of the goal, right? To do it without the crutch of poker or poker friends introducing you, right?
Technically, it was the goal. I mean, I didn't, again, this was my process with everything is so short sighted and how do you say, just when you punctuate your decisions and it's like you go with your intuition and I'm kind of hoping for you to pick up the word because I don't
Yeah,
know.
I'm thinking. Impulsive?
Yeah, yeah, impulsive is the word I was looking for, I think. Like a lot of my
Doesn't
long,
sound impulsive, the guy who's trying to figure out exactly which things to take out of the room with him. Like that sounds, pretty thoughtful and deliberate too.
I guess on a short term scale, I'm very deliberate and I overthink, but long term, I don't really plan much. And maybe impulsive is the wrong word then, true. But
I think it all comes back to you just really hard on yourself because we're all sometimes impulsive,
sure.
sometimes deliberate.
What I was gonna say is that I didn't really know what I wanted from this trip, and what I got from it was pretty cool. I guess I was kind of thinking that I have more, like when people say they go on the PCT or the what's the long hiking trip? Yeah, whatever, or any other long hike, and they go there to find themselves. I was kind of hoping more for this alone time where I just walk for a day for 10 hours, don't see a single soul, and then I have all these, epiphanies of what I need to change in my life, which is really not what I needed at all, but it was kind of what I was expecting that it will change my
But
whole.
you're a genuine person, and a lot of those people are just assholes who are going to post some stupid inspirational quote on Instagram. So I think, you might be comparing yourself to the wrong crowd.
It's very possible. I'm very naive to think that, there's a lot of good people out there and I don't hold myself to a high standard, but I guess what you're saying is true. People are,
Sometimes you just have to look at the reflection and what do people say to you and what comes back. And my impression is just everyone likes you and says good things. So I don't know. Maybe
yeah, I don't know.
stop putting so much stock in your own opinion.
Yeah, that would definitely help. It's just tough to accept, but again, working with it, I guess. I'll get there.
All right. You knew we were going to play the game at some point.
Beforehand, I kind of zoned out of that being a thing, even though I watched the majority of the podcast. But you told me so a couple of minutes ago into the podcast, so now I know.
What I didn't tell you is you're asking the questions. You're the first person I've had on that has this kind of experience that I trust you to come up with some good questions.
Okay, randomizing again because I saw the card.
Got it. Okay, click it a couple times in case. So, there you go. Good.
First question is, you're gonna have a podcast episode just like this one, and it's gonna be a realistic guest, and everything goes wrong on a technical basis. The stream crashes, the internet crashes, you have to restart a couple of times. This is how patient they're gonna be with their reaction and demeanor. And you rate them based on their patience. And Ace would be someone who's maybe like me, a little bit of a people pleaser who's not gonna give you a hard time, and yeah, Deuce is gonna be someone who's gonna be extremely upset and feels like
Got it.
you're not giving him.
Is it strictly how they respond or my level of anxiety in response to them? Because there might be someone who reacts quite negatively, but I don't give a fuck.
It's
I mean, I don't think I'm going to have anyone on.
gonna be about your experience, yeah.
Okay, got it. So a little context for everyone. I think Leon's inspiration is partly from the fact that I had to delay things because the usual platform I use is not working. So
Which I didn't feel particularly bad about, but maybe. And to be honest, technical errors I mean, maybe I'm talking too much about the question here, but technical errors in online poker, they're like the number one tilt purpose of people, I think. Whenever like the internet cuts out and something that is not in their control, which ironically is something that poker players should be very, very well adjusted to, because that's all we do. Take in whatever you can, do whatever you can control, and ignore the rest, kind of. But then again, technical errors you can be prepared for. Like if your internet cuts out, you could have had the second connection or whatever. So maybe that's where the tilt comes from. But
yeah, there's something to be said for preparation. David Yon.
I don't know why. I just have gotten to know David a little bit, and I whenever like all of his reactions, they are so authentic and genuine, and it's always very funny because he will always express all of his emotions, and they're kind of all over the place sometimes. I don't know if that's a rude thing to say. I don't think so. I love him, but it's yeah. I just envision him giving you a lot of potential expressions to work with, and well, I'm not going to steal your next answer to give you.
No.
Okay, this might also have me spiraling into all the wrong directions, but I think I like the question. So somehow you've decided on, or maybe you don't have, you hadn't decided, but for some weird entanglement, you're forced to add Dan Bilzerian to the GTO Lab team, and this is the role that he's gonna have within the team. A is, I mean, I don't know if this is a good thing to go down on mentioning any names after all, but anyway, an ace would be something that you feel comfortable having him as a role, and a deuce would be the most damage.
I think it's a good one. Dan's role in the company. Dan is going to be in charge of hiring all of our coaches.
Fuck me. Hiring coaches. Okay. So he does the communication with them or the selection process? Both? Can I ask that? Oh.
Selection. Yeah, he's hiring. He's the hiring guy.
Fuck, okay. I mean, that kind of, I was very high up with David. Again, whenever I just start thinking about what, you know, you can go off very, very good interactions with David when there's, but I guess when you have technical problems, then there's not much to go off on because you don't see or hear each other. But like the downtime in between where you do hear each other, I think he would make it very endurable. Dan Bilzerian to hire coaches, I don't think it's like a great thing for him to do. He does have great networking skills and he probably knows a lot of people, but not the ones that you would want for coaching. So that doesn't make any sense at all. So I'm in no man's land really. Maybe you think of David as like an impatient guy, he's like always moving, kind of an active person, which he is. Hiring coaches. I mean, he would definitely get hired like good names for publicity. That's for sure. I'm very live to be like off by 5 or 6 or something. Whatever answer I give. It's not my answer. I was gonna give it like a 6 or something because I'm just in no man's land kind of putting both pieces together, but I just have to go with the Dan Bilzerian piece of him hiring coaches where I think it's rather low. Worse things for Dan to be doing. Like he could be coaching himself, no offense. 5. I'm way off. It's high up. Yeah, of course.
Earlier today, you told me you did a hand breakdown, or a hand history analysis with a friend. Brings me a question that a lot of the guys are interested in. What does a good study session look like for you?
I don't think I'm the most efficient with this. Again, going back to the point of me not preparing myself outside of the table as much as I could. Because again, comfort zone guy, I like simple, efficient things that are very low effort. So if you take that into account, then a hand history review is exactly what I like doing. You can just click through hands, spiral back and forth what your thoughts are on, you know, whatever it is to talk about. And I think that's very efficient. Then maybe you put up some chip EV solves on the side. If it's an FT, you run some HRC. If stuff is interesting, let it run in the background, go through the other hands in the meantime, and you can be very efficient with that. I think what I haven't been doing enough while I review stuff with other people is that you also go down the rabbit hole of node logging things and really putting in the time. But again, it's just a time reward type calculation that you have to make, and that always is a very costly thing on the time sphere. Like node logging things just takes a lot of time, and clicking through the results and going back and forth and trying out things. But
what does a bad study session look like? Or productive in the wrong way?
yeah, I mean, there must be a lot of answers like that. I don't feel like I've had many unproductive study sessions. Very naive thing to say. I definitely had them from what the turnout was in the end. I guess just whenever it's, I mean, the nut low you can do is just have no structure, click through random solves, and be like, oh, this is a but even there you can learn things, right? Like whenever you look into a solver, you can talk about it. I think it's always your perspective, and if people whether people are open to go down all the different points of views and perspectives that you can have on a hand. So I think if you, to me, the most unproductive is just looking solver output versus solver output, because that's kind of doesn't really add much EV in what I want to learn or how I view the game. And yeah, then there's the cases of you do have a hand history review, and for some reason your brain that day is not really efficient, and you just spiral down some conversations about what the suit that you have has for blocker effects, and then you end up talking about it for like 20 minutes, trying to figure out which combo is the best one to check back here, or like very minor EV decisions. Going back to the Ike podcast, maybe, where you talked about efficiency within studying. This I've had a lot where it was very inefficient, but it was still interesting because you train your capability of hand selection and stuff. You always take away something. But just from a raw EV perspective, wasting time on low EV talking points is probably the answer for the least productive thing you can do.
Embedded in a lot of what you were saying, it sounded like a conversation with someone else. What percent of your studying to date would you guess has been solo versus with someone or multiple people?
So maybe I don't know if it's surprising, but it's definitely a high number. And also questionable what counts as studying. Like if I click through a replay on YouTube and think about what the hands I see and maybe run one or two solves, that counts as studying for me. So that pushes my alone study time up by a lot. I'm definitely a lot more all over the place when I study alone, and it's like very situational. Maybe I was grinding and I have a lot of pre-flop spots to run, then I will invest the time and go into HRC. If I didn't, then it's just okay, day is done kind of thing. But if you count all of these iterations,
Counting them 20%, those count as 20% study time.
oh really? Did you wouldn't count them fully?
Well, if you're watching and running a couple sims and running a couple spots, I think how much time. Not full. Let's. All right, we'll compromise it. 50% credit.
50% credit. Okay. Well, then it's pretty.
Otherwise, I have a lot of students who actually do study 40 hours a week, but I consider them 6 hours a week.
Okay, fair. And my time studying with other people is probably between 50 and 65%, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
I do invest a lot of time alone, but it's not that efficient. And again, whenever I have motivation and eagerness left in me, which is not that often, so.
How difficult do you think it would be for a player, let's just say they're break even in 1K live tournaments today, but they're a relatively talented person, generally motivated? How much more difficult would it be, if possible at all, to reach, let's say, the Triton level as a winning player without a group, without friends to bounce hands off of and people to study with?
I think it depends a lot on the individual, how he works, how he thinks, and what value he takes from the products he consumes. Like if you have the right courses, and I mean, I guess you're even saying he can't chat with people on Discord and he's like a total lone wolf. Yeah, it's very hard comparatively, I guess. It's doable, I think, but you need great working ethic. Is that how you say work mentality? I don't know. Work ethic, yeah. You compound your energy when you study with other people because, obviously you spiral off of each other. One week, the one guy says, let's do something. The other week, you say, let's do something on your own. You might not have the energy. But again, if you're the guy who's like working towards your goal 24/7, you only have this thing in mind and you're just going for it, I think it's possible. Volume can teach you a lot. And you said the guy was talented. Your intuition can teach you a lot. And again, there's great poker content out there online. You don't need to necessarily have other people look over your game. If, once again, you're very talented in the way that you also have great self-reflection and you're not too overconfident, you know where your leaks are kind of thing, you know how to work with them. It's possible. The metrics are out there. You can be taught this way of thinking. But I think a lot of things need to go right for you to find these things and also take away the correct bits and pieces from it. But again, if you listen to people like Ike talk about efficiency, and there's always stuff you can take away. And if you have a healthy relationship with your consumption and you're very efficient, I think you can have a great learning curve.
Talking about a healthy relationship with your consumption, um, kind of applies to diversity of all kinds, but diversity of thought within poker. I don't think you're going to find anyone who argues against having a bunch of different perspectives inflect your learning and your ability to, see the game through different lens. This person is a live tell guy. This guy is, very against following multi-way sims and, kind of wants to do it more on intuition, whatever. But there's a limit to it. If you hear 100 different voices, it's tough to synthesize that into a coherent strategy. Do you give much thought into how many voices to let in and how many different opinions if you're not getting enough different perspectives, or if you're getting so much that it's difficult to sift through the noise and actually make a proper strategy? Have you found yourself having both issues, just one issue? Curious your thoughts on that.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned that because during this hand history review that I did today, I definitely reminded myself of how all over the place my thought process is, and how I definitely sense that there's bits and pieces of myself and other people, and they're kind of entangled. And so, short answer is no, I don't have a great structure, and this does confuse me at times because your environment shapes you a lot. And I've talked with people that are from all sorts of spectrums on the way that they view the game and they think about the game. I've maybe kind of lost also confidence in my own abilities and just following what feels right. And so yeah, I am a bit confused about where my game is at, but I also haven't been playing as much this year, so there's just not that much fine tuning, and I can't go off of my autopilot as well. And it's something I need to look at in the future. I need to be very conscious about, I think. And it's probably like, now that you've mentioned, it's probably best to keep your circle kind of small so that, you know, you have a clear working path and a clear source of information. So you just need to be very confident that those sources are maybe reputable, but also valuable, and that you talk with the right people.
Sure. I think it's so easy. You can hear the argument in either direction. And when somebody's making the case for, like, oh, you want more opinions and you want to hear from people who see the game differently, sounds beautiful and lovely. And then you hear someone say kind of the opposite and say, like, at a certain point, you need to learn to trust yourself. You need to follow your gut. And if you hear too many conflicting opinions and you watch this GTO video and that, then you kind of, lose sight of what really matters. It's not either or. I think it's really tricky. And you brought up something that I give some resistance to students, especially very recreational people who've been playing for many years and have a certain old school approach. I tell them that if you're confident while you're playing, that has very little to do with the fact that you're playing well. And if you're not confident, that doesn't mean that you're playing poorly either. You've got plenty of not very good players who finish a full day of live poker and say, yeah, I didn't have any tough spots today. The fuck are you talking about? You just had your eyes closed. You just didn't know what was going on and you didn't notice any of them. And then you watch a couple of videos, you get some private coaching, someone, with a lot more knowledge kind of infects you with some of that. And then you're seeing the game, you say, I have no confidence anymore. I don't know what I'm doing. Well, that's probably the first step to getting better. That's the problem is, your grip on the world needed to be broken because you were seeing it in such a flawed way. You're not going to feel as comfortable. And I don't know that that's necessarily correlated with a bad thing. The beginning of growth is often pretty painful.
Yeah, from my experience, people don't go through that process that often where they switch perspectives and see their game as incomplete. And a lot of people, especially when you learn with solvers and you come up like that, you're just very confident in that you're doing the right thing. And if you just strive for equilibrium, you're on the right path. With that, there's complete information that you can work with, but And it's probably a way more comfortable process because once you go down the rabbit hole of incomplete information and knowing that you can strive for perfection in any sport and perfection is never reached, that can also be a very draining, stressful. You've been using these words a lot today. Process, and yeah, it's kind of tough. You need to be at ease with yourself that making mistakes is fine, which is something you've talked on this podcast about already.
I do think with the new school approach, though, the person who comes up with the solver, they're kind of like the born again, super religious person who just reads all the religious texts of whatever religion it is, and they are a strict literalist. Like, wow, now I have the word of God. And then a little bit of time sinks in, and their religious leaders like, well, we don't interpret it strictly as it's said. It actually, there's some nuance to it. And that's, you're playing in the real world and you say, whoa, my opponents are playing nothing like this. If you, let's say, limp level 1 of a 1K live tournament and a random 50-year-old ISOs the big blind, probably don't want to use the limp raise bluffs all that often because this guy's just nutted and like doesn't have 9-2-0 in his range. And there's just so many situations that, especially if you're playing below the highest stakes in the world or not against the best players in the world, that it may appear that there's complete information, but there's not. It's completely, not completely, it's 80% not accurate, especially once you get to the river as to how your your opponents are actually playing, unless you can, node lock perfectly, but that's the art, that's a nuance that no one's going to get perfectly right.
Yeah, from my experience, people often go with the excuse, which may be valid, that sometimes you're just making assumptions and those assumptions can be very flawed, and it's just a lot easier to stick with a GTO approach.
I agree with the car outside. I'm honking at that.
I'm honking at that too, but it's you again spare yourself of a lot of headaches where you spiral down certain assumption based plays.
But are they necessary headaches to grow?
I think so, very much so. But it's not everyone sees it this way. So this transition that you're talking about doesn't happen to many people, I think.
All right, Leonard, you heard Leon say it. We're good. So we have some questions. You mentioned Discord earlier. We have the GTO Lab Discord, and I solicited some questions for Rumukulus. Questions. Let's go with a fast fire round of GTO Lab questions. So I'll get as many in as possible, and we'll get the kind of snap answers when doable. Is he still involved in esports? Does he find time to play video games?
Interesting. I kind of zoned out of the first thing that you said but my answers. I'm just going to spiral off. I am involved. In fact, I was just in Cologne at a Counter-Strike event there, which was very fun with a lot of friends. And I play Counter-Strike, or throughout the past few years, I played a lot of Counter-Strike. Recently, less, but it's still a thing. Esports ambitions, less so, more so recreational play with a high sense of competitiveness and eagerness to win. But, I'm not very good at, or not good enough at Counter-Strike to be pursuing anything.
Okay. Why is he primarily playing live these days? That kind of may be answered already. I don't know.
Yeah, I haven't been touched directly, but yeah, just the lifestyle of playing online, waking up late, going to bed very late. In the winter, you don't see any sunlight. Online poker also being dead, and then there you have your headline for the podcast: is online poker deadly? And I saw a podcast with Dan DeVoris and Jungleman where that was the headline. That's where this idea comes from. And I haven't heard it. Maybe Dan has similar ideas, but I also think online poker is just not as doesn't have as much EV in there as it used to be. So on live poker lifestyle is more fun, but yeah, that suffices as an answer. I don't like not being as much in Vienna and traveling a lot, but you can find your middle ground with that, and yeah, I think it's a good place to be.
Where do you see yourself on the introvert-extrovert spectrum?
For the longest time, I thought of myself as a big introvert, just because I was spending so much time inside. But nowadays I think of this as a very fluid term. Like I always thought this is a black and white type statement. You're either introverted or you're extroverted, but I think people transist through that within their lives, maybe, probably. And I don't necessarily think of myself as a particularly introverted, extroverted guy anymore. Sometimes I'm very extroverted when the social setting is right. I guess in general I would still lean introverted because, yeah, I do get socially anxious a lot. But, I will grow out of that and then I will be a lot more extroverted in the future. That's where I think I'm headed.
Right. I think it's always interesting how do others perceive each other on this. Where do you see me on the introvert extrovert spectrum?
Also leaning introvert, you're very selective with your social endeavors, which doesn't necessarily need to be an introvert extrovert type thing. Um, then again, you're easy to open up to when you open up to people and you have very diverse conversations with people that you barely know, but that's just a thing that poker teaches you. I would have you lean rather extroverted, I guess. And the selective thing that I talked about at the beginning is more of a conscious decision rather than you feeling socially awkward. But I do know that you are self-conscious about a bunch of things. So yeah, leaning likely extroverted maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, I think like maybe 10 years ago, I felt like everyone I knew described themselves as way more introverted than other people did. And I would have always described myself as very introverted. And then I realized, like, I guess I'm not. I
Mhm.
talk a lot. It's just like my parents are two of the most extroverted people I've ever encountered, and my older brother won't shut his fucking mouth in like any situation. So I think of myself as introverted relative to them, but I think everyone kind of has a tendency to judge themselves on what they don't show other people, and I'm like. I don't want to talk to anyone on break. I don't want to talk to anyone on dinner. When the day of poker is over, I want to be by myself and I look around and see all these people wanting or seemingly wanting to chat with each other,
Mhm.
and it makes me feel introverted. And then I kind of like look at it a little more holistically. And yeah,
Yeah,
my best guess is I'm like slightly extroverted.
okay. Well, in my head, the definition of the two are also kind of vague, and I don't really know how to work with that. Because exactly what you said, a lot of people are a lot more open to chat. They will be very actively asking a lot of questions that have the conversation going, and I don't mind if there's silence or sometimes I just don't have anything that interests me right now if the conversation doesn't strive for it. So if that means I'm introverted, then I guess I'm introverted. But again, definition is tough with this, and it's a term that's overused a lot, I think.
Yes, yeah, it does seem like an overused thing. I wonder how much value there is in it at all. Not just to shit on a label, but is there anything that can kind of come from once you do recognize these things about yourself? Which title made you feel the most excitement?
Title as in tournament I won. The answer will be something very early in my career, I think, because down the line I was so in tune with the process and knowing that it's just, eventually you're gonna win this and that. So if you phrase the question like that, the excitement that I got, I won like a 215 bounty builder series on stars, which was my first big 5-figure cash for 70K in 2020, I think, early 2020. And that's also something my dad recently mentioned to me because I phoned him at like 9 a.m. in the morning after I won the tournament and was like, yeah, just won a bunch of money. So I guess this is also an indicator for me that I felt excited because I immediately wanted to tell my parents. So, um, yeah, I'll take that one.
Which of the German rags does he think he's most likely to beat in a wrestling match? That comes from Lewis Spencer.
I think there's a bunch I can beat.
Hit me. Name
I
names.
mean, I mean, I don't know if most of them you're not gonna know.
It's okay. We can dredge up a picture. I got Google.
You can do Adrian Strobel is the first one that comes to mind because I raced him at EPT once and he was confident he was gonna win. He was gonna wager 1K on it and I won by a land mile. And I would also beat him in a wrestling match, I think. But maybe there isn't that many more.
What about you versus Toby? Who do you got?
Oh, true. I would probably win, yeah.
Yeah. Leonard's got your number, right?
What does that mean? Got my number?
He's going to beat you.
I mean, yeah, he's, you know, 2 feet taller than me. Not actually.
Okay.
Like 1 foot, is that how? Yeah.
Well, if we're going with size, can you handle Shillabell?
No,
He's Austrian though, right?
no, he's German.
Okay. He looks like a tough son of a bitch.
Yeah, yeah, he's punched a guy or two.
What about Fedor?
Fedor I could maybe handle, but he would be very technical and very tough to beat, I think.
Yeah. Oh yeah, doesn't he? He does BJJ, right?
What? What is that?
I think he does Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
I would have not known that it's possible. It sounds like a thing that he would try to pick up, so he, gains more physical confidence.
Are you down for a round of overrated, underrated?
Yeah, I've never played, but very much down.
All right. Had you listened to that Tyler Cowan podcast I sent you the other day, you'd know exactly what I'm talking about. But you'll have to be flipped order. It's a good one.
I'm planning to still listen to it.
Yeah. All right. Well, for anyone who wants Paul Bloom on Tyler Cowan, good podcast. This round of overrated, underrated is all going to be oriented towards being a great high stakes live poker player. If you want to elaborate on an answer, feel free. If you want to leave it at overrated or underrated, great.
Hmm.
ICM studying.
Underrated, maybe slightly, but it's one of the most important things pre-flop. And
Oh, good. I didn't mean to cut you off.
there isn't that much more to say. People are very aware of it being an important thing, but I don't think that it's possible to shine enough light on it because it's just very important, I think.
Being good at math.
In my brain, it's underrated, especially at the live table where you have to count pots and everything. And, yeah,
Live reads.
underrated.
High IQ.
I don't know how it's rated by the general public. I don't hear many people speak about it. Probably overrated.
Are you just balancing because everything's been underrated?
No, not necessarily. I personally think it helps a lot to be very intelligent in terms of how you learn the game and everything. But if you're, this is a thing that people will say a lot. If you're very efficient with, and if you really want to do something and you just get better every day, then there's no intelligence bar that you need to pass. I mean, obviously there is one eventually, but yeah, I think it's very possible if you have a good process that you will outwork whoever is smart but doesn't put in the work.
Mm-hmm. So we'll go to. I've never taken an IQ test, but I don't think that this is a part of one. Emotional intelligence.
Underrated because I don't think it's being talked about a lot. I think this can spiral backwards. Kind of the topic of empathy can be your enemy type thing. When, like, for me personally, I feel like I'm too sensitive to things and also very too self-conscious. I don't know if that's an emotional intelligence thing. Maybe not necessarily. Either way, it's very good to know the emotional constraints of a certain spot, how it feels for you, so that you can project that on your villain, which might not always be accurate. People might view spots completely differently, but if you know the rough heuristics, I think it's an important thing to know. And again, I don't feel like people are talking about it at all, so I would say underrated.
Being well connected.
Underrated.
We talked about some of the kind of unique lens that you have on the social scene in the high rollers being, you know, pretty much the youngest guy in every conversation you're in, and sometimes significantly so. One thing that I think everyone who plays high rollers finds themselves having to navigate to some degree is this different levels of friendship and acquaintanceship with different people as it relates to what you're willing to reveal strategically. You know, you get in conversations, you may find yourself on break with someone who you're not close with, you respect them, but you guys are discussing a hand that somebody just played at the table, and there's this kind of cat and mouse sometimes where some people are willing to reveal a lot right away and other people want to be kind of cagey about explaining their full thought process, and many are going to, you know, employ subterfuge and kind of, you know, maybe give you a thought process that's not exactly how they're approaching it. What are your thoughts on that? Have you experienced very different levels of sharing from different people? Have you found yourself have to kind of tone it down occasionally with some people, or, you know, worry that maybe someone is giving you more and that you're not, you know, sharing with them as much as they are with you?
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting topic. I think it happens not that often that I will talk poker with someone who I don't talk poker with already to some extent, but it definitely has occurred a fair number of times, so I can give my opinion on it either way. I think overall people seem to be rather authentic, especially in the high stakes scene. I myself feel like I'm already mostly giving authentic answers. I will limit it to an extent. Like I will not go into what I think about the other person's game. But especially if you're talking about a hand that someone else played, I will maybe say, oh, maybe population does this too much, or I will lean into some thoughts that I will have in game as well, and in that way, not try to hide anything from my answer. But I've definitely sensed quite often that people are hiding things and they're bad at hiding that they're hiding something. And then you definitely notice this case of people who seem authentic but actually are not giving you the full picture. First name that pops into my head would be Sean Winter or I don't know, Sam Soverell, who that would be accurate with because they're just very smart about how they are perceived at the game and they're very conscious about that. Um, I'm sure it happens. I don't pick it up that often because I'm naive and I think everyone tells the truth and everyone's just being friendly with each other, even though it's a highly competitive field and everyone's kind of fighting for the EV technically. Um, so yeah, I feel like overall people are authentic, but you do have a decent amount of players who are not trying to give too much away.
One of the things that I find I encounter a lot is usually in more of a gossipy context, someone editorializes. They say like, "Oh yeah, but it's Leon," and the idea was, "Oh, Leon is super lag in this spot, or Leon is a big nit in this spot." It's very clear what they mean. They say like, "Oh, Leon would overbluff that spot," is the implication, and you're left with, do I agree? Do I disagree? Do I point out that I didn't realize Leon's nitty in those spots? Like, are they feeling me out for my, understanding? Usually it's not anything strategic. Like they're just being a little gossipy. Like someone they just think is a nit, and they kind of say, they imply that maybe not even playing the long game at all, trying to get your opinion or whatnot. But you find yourself in the spot where you're like, there's no way to react without giving my opinion to some degree. I guess I can be neutral, but then I feel like I'm almost being standoffish while this person opened up a little bit.
Yeah, I've definitely noticed this as well. A lot of people are mentioning names. I don't think people are trying to get any read of you in terms of what your perception of that player is.
But if you give anything back, you are giving that information, and it may be shared with a lot of people depending on what that person's
That's
network looks
true.
like.
I think I have a comfortable position in that I don't hold many great opinions about many players. Like I will just in general I think every spot is very unique and in every spot a lot of players are capable, especially in the high roller scene where people obviously thinking very critically about their own game and the game in general. Um, Tendencies are very important and they're undervalued if we want to go back to that game. Um, and yet I don't think enough about it, so I don't feel like I'm a guy who can give a lot of information away because it's not been something that I looked into a lot. So I have less of an opinion than maybe other people do who study the Triton streams a lot or put a lot of time into that. Which is not saying that I do it consciously. I think it's something that I leak. But yeah, so I don't worry about giving too much away because I don't hold too many opinions of players. I also think people come to conclusions too quickly. Like they see one or two hands and they don't realize that in the moment people might have had certain reads, opinions, reasons for a certain play, and they just come to conclusions too quickly.
Yeah, I think there's a quote that probably encapsulates high stakes poker pretty well, which is the best time to come to a conclusion about someone is never.
What was that quote by? From?
I don't know, but George Saunders is an author that I really like, and he mentioned it in a podcast recently.
Uh,
Which brings us to the the creator of that pod or the host of that podcast is the person who I've stolen my ending from, which is 3 recommendations.
Yeah,
Any kind of recommendations you like.
this is where we lose all the viewers because they seemingly don't wanna listen to that, but listen to it because this is important. This is what I like. Okay, yeah, I prepared a small list, and I'm just going through the selection process. Okay, first one is very simple. Just a musician I recently found, even though he's been quite popular. It's Fred again. It's like an electronic DJ. I haven't really been into electronic music at all, and he's, I'm hooked. I've been listening to his pieces for the last week or 2 weeks or so. So that's more of a generic tip. And then I'm reading a book, which is more of a concept, which I've tried to embody in my life a little bit. It's called digital minimalism, which already gives away what it's about, and just to be very mindful about your digital consumption, especially when you're very young and you are yet to learn how a healthy media consumption looks like. Yeah, I've only started the book and I already can tell that I'm going to take a lot of great things from it. And this idea in general has been on my mind for the last year or so. So just being conscious about your media consumption in short. Third one, I can choose between 2 that I have standing here. I'm going to take the simple one, which is walks, because I know you enjoy walks a lot too. Just walk more, go more on walks. It's great.
Yeah. I'd say maybe like good 6 times or so over the past year, you and I have had nice long conversation, either a walk in person or you're doing whatever. I don't know what you're doing, but I'm walking all around my neighborhood while we chat.
And actually, let me do the fourth one, because I was kind of thinking maybe this doesn't strive to a lot of people as important, but it's been important to me, and even today I noticed this a lot, just to treat yourself with respect and learning how to do that. Like if you could, especially if you emphasized, like you, the viewer, with a lot of the things I said today and how I feel about myself and everything, I think it's a very important skill to be gentle with yourself, especially in today's age where, cutting back to the digital minimalism thing, social media trains you to be very hard on yourself and just judge yourself too much. So important to be
That's
complete.
what I was thinking earlier when I was like giving you shit about like, why do you think all these negative things about yourself? Everyone I know likes you and enjoys you, and I'm just like, I forget that, like many people, you're on your phone so much and comparing yourself to like all these fake top dogs and all these different things. I'm like, oh my god, yeah, it's just poison. That's so difficult.
I mean, it's even happening here, right? Like the version of the podcast people are gonna see is the cut version, where a lot of the fuck ups and stuff where I had to think of my question for 10 minutes because I'm very uncreative and I feel the pressure and everything. But the uncreative thing, I just added.
Yeah,
You,
I get what you're saying. Yeah, but I'm gonna leave us being assholes in for most of it.
fair.
Didn't you see what I did with Ike with the Jeopardy music with him taking forever on the questions?
Oh yeah, I mean, I guess these things I don't notice that much because no, I remember. But even that is like, to you that feels like it's not that long because it's obviously fast forwarded and everything.
Yeah. That's fair.
And obviously no one thinks of it. Oh my god, he needs so much time. It's normal. But yeah, I'm just saying you're seeing the uncut perfect version, which is what happens on the internet a lot. And
Yeah, I agree. I think that's definitely true, that even if you're trying to be authentic, what I've realized are my favorite podcasts, they're really genuine and authentic people, but no one wants to listen to the bullshit. Like, it's very rare that you want to just, have your time wasted by people thinking and like, completely miscommunicating for 10 minutes and then figuring out what they miscommunicated about and then getting back to it. And,
yeah, you have to create highlights. You have to be on par with what people want to see, and it's just a very competitive field to capture people's time these days because there's so much content out there, right? It's just a slippery slope, or like it just tangles back and forth between where people maybe want to create authentic content, but most of the authentic content might not get as much interaction.